Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the internet, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot to get to today, but before we jump into it, we got to make sure that the stream is broadcasting. Hello, before we can start talking, got to make sure somebody's on the other end, and it looks like we're live, so let's get rocking and rolling. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency back down upon our very system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today. We've got some of the Derek Chauvin aftermath that we've got to get to. We've got some reaction, of course, from George Floyd and his not George Floyd, but George Floyd's family, his brother Philonise and others. We've got Ben Crump, who has been out there very celebratory about the verdict and about the 3 convictions that Derek Chauvin is now facing. So we've got a lot to break down there. President Biden weighed in on this. Attorney General Merrick Garland brought this forward. Nancy Pelosi yesterday is even thankful that George Floyd is no longer with us. She's pretty, happy that he's not here because of all the good stuff that is coming as a result of his death. We also have AOC, who's not happy about this. So while a lot of other individuals are thrilled that Derek Chauvin was convicted on all 3 counts, AOC and some others are not particularly happy about it. So we've got a little bit of stuff we got to get through on the Chauvin analysis. Then we're going to change gears because before we even finish talking about Derek Chauvin, there was yet another police shooting. And this one's a little bit different. Yesterday, as we were getting, actually, I think as we were on the live stream, there was murmurings that a new shooting, new protests were developing surrounding the young woman named Ma'Khia Bryant, who was 16 years old, shot and killed out of Columbus, Ohio. And so this is an interesting case. Everybody's sort of spring-loaded now to pick a justice issue, to pick any particular problem that crops up in our justice system and pick a side, right? Whether it's Rittenhouse or Chauvin or now Bryant. Everybody wants to sort of find a team and join that team quickly and then sort of make a situation into something that it really isn't. And so that happened to a degree that was kind of shocking yesterday, because when we really dive into the Ma'Khia Bryant case, I think it's pretty obvious what happened here and that the shooting was in fact necessary. But still, a lot of people don't see it that way. So we've got to break that down. Then we got to talk about, it's been a long time, folks, since we had a little bad popo segment on this channel, but we've got one. We've got a bad popo here in the state of Arizona, actually. Guy by the name of Juliet Navarrete, still part of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office, was picked up for a DUI very recently. Tried to talk his way out of it a little bit. Didn't work out for him. Of course, he still got charged. NBC News got a copy of the body camera, and so we're going to go through some of that today. So we've got a bad popo, and we have a good popo, because the arresting officer there said, hey man, what are you doing? You shouldn't even be a cop based on the fact that you're trying to get out of this thing. You are not fit for the job, he said, or something like that. So we've got a bad popo and a very good popo, and we're going to talk about both of those today. Want to invite you to be a part of the show because we do take questions in between those different segments. We've got a lot to talk about. Of course, you have opinions on those, and you've got some insight you want to share. You've got some comments or even some criticisms you want to lob our way. The place to do that is over at locals.com. We have a community there called Watching the Watchers. And it's a little bit of a area where we all congregate. We share links throughout the day. We comment. We engage with one another and have good conversations. And we ask questions over there. So there's a live chat happening right there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com where ask a question. Miss Faith is somewhere around here clipping stuff in my PowerPoint slides, clipping questions, clipping comments, and we will get to them. So you can also support the show there by going to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And there is a promo code for a very exciting new thing that I just launched called Existence Systems. This is my personal productivity little thing that I talk about regularly, existencesystems.com if you want to check it out. If you're a Locals subscriber, if you're a member over there, you get a promo code to get this course, which is available also at existencesystems.com. We'll talk more about that later. All right, so let's get into the news of the day. Get this queued up. Verdict came out in the Derek Chauvin case, and it was convictions on all 3 counts. Some people were surprised, some not so surprised. A lot of people were very happy about that in different corners of our country. And so today we're going to go through a little bit of the aftermath. What happened? What was some of the fallout as a result of this conviction, as a result of the trial? We spent a lot of time on this channel taking a deep dive into the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd case. And so now we want to see what, how is this landing? How is society, how is America responding to this new outcome? And so I want to start by going through some pictures and some articles over from the Daily Mail. This is one image we saw yesterday, Tuesday afternoon, right outside of the Cup Foods. So Cup Food, this is really like literally right where the whole situation went down. This is in Minneapolis. Cup Foods is right over here. And we see, big memorials for Floyd. A lot of people hugging, a lot of, people sort of dancing, clapping in the air. Very happy, very excited. We've got, a sign saying no justice, no streets. The sort of the BLM fist is being raised into the air. And so a lot of people are very happy about it. Daily Mail is noting that cheers rang out across America from Minnesota to New York City on Tuesday afternoon as thousands celebrated. And they're sort of, this is the culmination of the BLM movement. And we have a lot of months, the summer unrest months over last year. And so it's all sort of, this is the end point of that, hopefully, if people are hoping anyways. Biden, Obama, and other senior Democrats vowed to make Floyd's death a turning point in civil rights. We've seen a lot of that come out thus far, right? We're talking about racial equity now. We're seeing a lot of the critical race theory. A lot of the civil rights stuff is coming back. Biden phoned Floyd's family outside of court to pledge that he was going to work to change the course of history. We have people were, sort of out there taking the streets. National Guard in Minneapolis were able to stand down finally after weeks of on tenterhooks, is what they're saying. So yeah, they got to stand down because the people got the verdict that they wanted. They were there in case it went the other way, sort of a little bit of a threat there. If this is not a guilty verdict, well, the National Guard may have been called into play, but because there was convictions across the board, they can now stand down. Floyd's family held a press conference. 6-year-old daughter was among them. We have pictures of that. "We are able to breathe again," said his younger brother, Phil Anise. "Justice for George means freedom for all." Far-left Democrats, including AOC and Ilhan Omar, claim that this is not justice. So, they want sort of more as a result. And Biden's attorney general said that they are opening up a sweeping investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department. So if you were a part of Minneapolis Police Department and you thought, oh my gosh, finally, this is about to be over. We've been living under this burden for a year now. Finally, we're going to get some closure on this. Not so fast there, because you have the other 3 officers who are scheduled for their court, I think August 23rd. I don't know if that's a trial or a final trial management conference or something to that effect, but they're coming up. And now you have the federal government who's parachuting into Minneapolis, and they're going to be opening up a sweeping investigation into the Minneapolis PD. So we'll see what that does to the police department there, whether officers stick around or not. We have some more images, a lot of happiness and glee from around the country. Here's a woman cheers from outside the courthouse. So a lot of those COVID precautions are now not so much in effect. A lot of media, you're going to see a lot of cameras all over the place, right? People are documenting this. It's sort of a historic moment for a lot of people. And I saw a lot of images. It was really funny. I don't think we clipped any of them here today because this is sort of the mainstream, news stuff. But there were some images on Twitter of photographers behind rows of photographers behind rows of photographers, all with somebody posing, taking, fist in the air, whatever, taking, it was all very, very Instagrammable, if you want to use that term. And so, people were memorializing this. It's a big victory for them. All right. So, good for you. Okay, fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. I think that this was a tragic thing for our country across the board. I don't know that either side is better off as a result of this thing. I think the justice system largely feels like both sides have a little bit less faith in it. I'm not sure that either side really thought that this was a fair trial. We had a one side who was demanding a particular outcome. You had another side who was concerned that there wasn't, due process that was being afforded, and sort of a back and forth both directions. One side won, but I'm not sure that the country won on the whole of things. Here's another image. where there's people, there's power. So again, this is in the nearby area. This is George Floyd Square, the intersection where the fatal arrest took place in May last year. So there's a whole square now. More images from outside of Cup Foods, right? We all remember this. The police vehicle was like right here, and we saw a lot of movement throughout this area. A lot of people all there, close proximity. So celebrating. Here's George Floyd's daughter. Didn't hear much about her throughout the last course of the year, but here she is at a press conference along with other members of the family. Here is Terrence Floyd. Said, I will miss him, but now I know he's in history. What a day to be a Floyd man. Yeah, so, families making do as a result of their loss. And Derek Chauvin is off to prison, so we've got some more info on what's going on with him. He's pictured in a prison jumpsuit. You can see him here, sort of in the oranges. The facial expression there, I'm not sure, looks kind of dead inside, right? He's pictured in a jumpsuit. He's going to Oak Park Heights maximum security prison, where he's placed on suicide watch ahead of sentencing in 8 weeks. So probably, I don't think that there's really anything that has triggered that. Kind of just a standard precaution, given the fact that he's facing a very serious consequence here. Minnesota DOC released a new booking photo. Woke up from his first night in Oak Park Heights. He's being watched closely by guards to ensure his safety, not just a suicide risk, but also from other inmates, many of whom resent law enforcement, maybe threats to him, many of the other inmates there. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse as he was found guilty. He faces a minimum sentence of 12 and a half years and a maximum of 40 years. Former cop is expected to file a swift appeal. Took celebrations across the country. Biden called. Merrick Garland called. Jem Bruton, former warden of Oak Park Heights, described in his 2004 book about the prison how the hierarchy among inmates is determined by the crime committed. So you have sort of this hierarchy in prison based upon the severity of the crime. At the top of the scale are those who have killed a law enforcement officer. At the bottom are sex offenders, child molesters. They're considered lowest of the low. This hierarchy, coupled with Chauvin's infamy as a police officer, means he will undoubtedly require bolstered protection and constant monitoring. And then once again, this is an image of course, Derek Chauvin and the prison where he will be housed for the foreseeable future. And, they get very dramatic in these articles. No prisoner has ever escaped from Oak Park Heights, which houses around 500 of the most dangerous inmates in the state. Okay, great. 25 miles east of Minneapolis on the border with Wisconsin. That's kind of a tongue twister there. Chauvin is being closely watched by guards to ensure his safety and severity, be protected from other inmates. This is what the inside of the cell looks like. This is a medical cell. Chauvin is expected to be held at the prison until his sentencing. So this is medical. That doesn't look like a jail facility. This is another image from inside from Oak Park Heights. So about what you would expect, right? Typically brighter than what you see in the TV shows. TV shows and the movies is like this dark, gloomy scene. They're pretty well lit in there. You want to see what's going on inside these facilities. And there was some speculation about Derek Chauvin and what he wrote on his hand. So everybody's kind of watching yesterday as the verdict was being announced to see his facial expressions. What does the attorney do? It's a really just awkward situation where you're kind of like, oh, well, all right, this is what happened. So, they're gonna take you now. Sorry. It's a really troubling thing as a defense lawyer to have to sort of there's no good way to do this, right? And so everybody's watching, how did this go? You lean over, give him a hug, pat him on the shoulder, what's the deal? So he kind of just, all right, this is it. So what did Derek Chauvin write on his hand, right? There's something here that was he was sort of scribbling as the government moved to revoke his bond. He's guilty on all three counts. Government, any motions from the state? Yeah, Your Honor, move to revoke bond and remand. All right, yes, granted. He goes into custody, scribbles something on his hand. Well, what the heck was that? Here is what he wrote down. It was his lawyer's phone number. He wrote on his hand, according to the New York Post. Chauvin's lawyer, Eric Nelson, confirmed with TMZ that his client wrote down the number in anticipation of having his bail revoked, which it was following the guilty verdict on all counts. Photographs showing him being escorted out. Writing can be seen on his left palm. Faces a maximum of 40 years in prison. So kind of an interesting. It's like, was he not expecting that at all? Like, he didn't have a business card. He'd been working with this guy for a year now. Did he not have his phone number? Kind of a weird thing to write down at the last minute. So here is Ben Crump, and they were recording the call from the Bidens.
Hello. Hello. Hey, how you doing?
How's Gianna doing?
Feeling better now. Nothing is going to make it all better, but at least God, now there's some justice.
Right.
You know? And, I think Gianna's coming. My dad is going to change the world. He's going to start to change it now.
That's right.
Yes. Amen.
Start to change it now.
All right. So Joe Biden's doing his little old man thing, we're going to change it now is what he said. We're going to change it. At least there's justice. At least there's justice. We're going to change this world. All right. So yeah, which is hilarious because Joe Biden, of course, as we know here on this channel, we hold them accountable. 1994 crime bill, 1984, 1986, 1988, all responsible from Joe Biden. He said that any crime bill that came out of Congress since like 1976, guess whose name it had on it? Joe Biden's. That's according to his own statement, his own testimony. So there is no single person in this country, in my opinion, who's more responsible for the current state of our justice system than Joe Biden. Second in hierarchy there is Kamala Harris. So these two yahoos are now out there at the forefront screaming about criminal justice reform when they are directly responsible. They are the chief architects for constructing the current system that we live in right now. Literally, I mean, they passed the laws that we are still trying to undo. When we talk about criminal justice reform, whose laws do you think we're trying to reform? They're not Trump's laws. Okay, they're not Bush's laws or Obama's laws. They're all Biden's laws. The same bills that he passed one right after the other for a long period of time. Now they're out there screaming about this. We got to reform all of this stuff. And they are just taking the credit for all of this. They're sort of, basking in the glory. We're going to call Floyd. Hey, do you realize that Derek Chauvin and the entire police department there, a lot of their policies were developed as a direct consequence of the same crime bill that Joe Biden passed in 1994, right? It trickled all down. What we see in practice is he is the architect of that. So now he's on the phone. Oh, justice, justice, justice. It's like, hey, guys, there's a good argument that if Joe Biden didn't pass all of those bills and we had gone a different direction, maybe none of this stuff would have happened. Maybe our system would be much better than it is currently. Now we have to go back and reform a bunch of stuff that the guy in charge created. It's kind of like we're living in the Twilight Zone here, but that is what it is. We've got George Floyd and his family, of course, are reacting to it. So they're very happy about this, obviously. And you can't fault them for that, right? Their brother, son, right, father is not with us anymore in a very gruesome thing. He is, he's become the focus of everything in this country for the last year. Now we have Reverend Al Sharpton, who sort of parades in at the last minute. Where the hell has he been this entire time? He sort of flies in on his private jet, and now he just raises his hand up with the other people who are directly, impacted. We got Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, both in there. Everybody wants to be a part of this thing, and I'm going to show you why this is so irritating, because this is now becoming sort of a thing now. It's sort of that this is going to be a template that we're going to follow on all of the cases that happen this way. We have Ben Crump says, guilty. Painfully earned justice has finally arrived for George Floyd's family. Verdict is a turning point in history and sends a clear message on the need for accountability of law enforcement. Justice for Black America is justice for all America. And I agree with a lot of ideas here that we do need some justice reform and we do need some serious modifications and improvements in our legal system. But I do have some issues about how we got here. And so we're going to get into more of that, I'm sure. Biden to America says we cannot stop here. Joe Biden said on Tuesday that the system that the conviction can be a giant step forward. He declared it's not enough. Biden spoke from the White House hours after the verdict alongside Kamala Harris. So we have the biggest crime duo in the country are now out there talking about, we can't stop here, says Joe Biden. Biden and Harris called on Congress to act swiftly to address policing reform, including approving a bill named for Floyd, who died with his neck under Chauvin's knee. Beyond that, President said the entire country must confront hatred to change hearts and minds as well as laws and policies. I can't breathe. Those were Floyd's last words, said Biden. We can't let those words die with him. We have to keep hearing those words. We must not turn away. We can't turn away. So he always does that thing. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice, said Kamala Harris. We are so relieved. Okay, so we've got those two people. Here is Merrick Garland now. Very short statement. Says the jury in the state trial of Derek Chauvin has fulfilled its civic duty and rendered a verdict convicting him on all counts. While the state's prosecution was successful, I know that nothing can fill the void that the loved ones of George Floyd have felt since his death. Justice Department has previously announced a federal civil rights investigation into the death of Floyd. This investigation is ongoing. So that's going to be continuing forward. So a lot of happiness out there. And then we have some people who are not happy, right? And a lot of people have been saying this for a long time also. What is it going to take to actually make these people happy? It's been a criticism that I have been lobbying for a long time now. I really don't know what the final sort of end point is for some of these movements like BLM. I mean, is it literally defund the police? Is that what we're talking about? If you're not happy with this stuff, if you're not happy that there was a conviction in Chauvin's case, what else do you think needs to be done? And I've several times on this channel proffered multiple solutions. I have several PowerPoint slides that just have lists of different solutions. And I'm open to them. I'm not saying that at all. I'm open to them, but I would like to see some proposals from some of these people. And if it is just defund the police, well, then we got to see some activity on that. I want to see some bills. I want to see some momentum, because right now we have just a lot of people who are pontificating about this stuff, and a lot of these people are elected officials. They're actually in Congress, so they have the power to do some of this stuff. We hear Jacob Frey in Minneapolis, who's sort of, complaining about it. You're the mayor, brother. Why don't you get out there and do something about this? You've got, AOC over here. You've got President Biden and Kamala Harris right now. Okay, Congress, go do something about that. So we'll see. We'll see if anything gets done. I doubt it. But here is AOC, who is also unhappy about this on her Instagram right outside the congressional building.
It's not justice. And I'll explain to you why it's not justice. It's not justice because justice is George Floyd going home tonight to be with his family. Justice is Adam Toledo getting tucked in by his mom tonight. Justice is when you're pulled over, there not being a...
All right, so she just goes, who knows what she's even talking about. Sounds like she's talking about a time machine. Justice is George Floyd going home to his family. Okay, well, we can't have that, okay? We're not living in bizarro land, fantasy world. George Floyd's not going to come home. Adam Toledo is not going to get tucked in. So what is your other solution? Is there anything else that you would like to propose that we can act on? And if it's just defund the police, let's see a bill. Get with the other, ladies there in your crew and do your thing and submit a bill so that we can see it, because I hear a lot of talking from a lot of these politicians and it's all useless. I'm pretty sick of it. So we have Nancy Pelosi now in one of the most condescending things I've ever seen. We saw this yesterday. We played it, but I was sort of scattered because I was trying to consume all the news. I got to watch it again, and I'm just sort of blown away that this is an elected person who is saying this. So she comes out. You probably saw this again. I just wanted to dunk on it one more time. Here is Nancy Pelosi saying, "Thank you, George Floyd, for dying." And she looks up at the sky. She's like, "Thank you, George. Thanks for dying, George." And then she goes out and listen to this. It's so friggin' patronizing. I can't even take it. She says he called out for his mom. Isn't that sweet? Looking around like he just did something funny, like a 4-year-old, right? Oh, look what he did. He just took the cap off that thing. That's great, right? Oh, isn't that sweet? And I mean, this folks, when I see this stuff, it's hard for me to sort of think that these people are even remotely genuine at all, right? And I know they're politicians. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt from time to time. Maybe she comes out here and really does give a statement about George Floyd, right? Awful thing. The whole thing's a tragedy, right? I do feel bad for Floyd. I do feel bad for Chauvin. I feel bad for the whole city. I feel bad for the whole country, because it's not good for anybody. The justice system is set back dramatically by these cases because everybody is upset about it. Nobody's really happy except a very small select few of people who then, when the next thing happens, they're not happy about it. AOC's also not happy. They're not going to wake up tomorrow and go, you know what? This is great. Derek Chauvin, that was justice, in fact. That he got what he deserved. He got convicted on all 3 counts. Therefore, I have some faith in the justice system. Let's get back to business. Maybe the next time that a white officer kills a black person, maybe we give that officer the benefit of the doubt, or the justice system. Maybe not even the officer. Maybe the system. We just say, well, the system worked this time, so we have a little bit more faith in it now. Is that going to happen as a result, as a consequence of the Derek Chauvin convictions? No, of course not. Right? It's not going to get any better. They're going to complain about the next one. We're going to talk about this in the next segment. We have a legitimate shooting that happened with this Ma'Khia Bryant young woman, and we already see it, right? The narrative is starting back up again. So it's like you can't win. So here is Nancy Pelosi now, who I want to just say, look, maybe she's going to come out and be an actual human being for 30 seconds. She can't even muster that. Here she's saying, thanks for dying, George. Appreciate it. Also, that was so sweet. You know how you were calling out from your mom. Here's Nancy. This is the most powerful person in our U.S. House of Representatives.
So again, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice.
All right. So as though that, George Floyd sort of woke up and said, you know what, justice in America needs some reform. I'm going to go sacrifice myself in the name of my country, right? That didn't happen. He was killed, right? He was killed or died in an altercation, however you want to, define that. The jury said he was killed by Derek Chauvin. That legally is the distinction here. That's why he was convicted. Now, we've got some questions that we got to get to over at locals.com. And our first one comes in from National Populist. Says, how significant is the Maxine Waters threat for an appeal? Is there any path to mistrial after a verdict? So you're asking basically if there's any way that we can unring this bell, or the defense can unring this bell. And the answer really, in my opinion, is no. I think, a lot of people out there, I've seen some takes out there. Let me disclaimer this first and foremost. I am not an appeals attorney. Okay. We don't do that. We will very, very rarely do it. And typically we'll bring on sort of external help. There are specific attorneys who are very good at appeals, and they know how it's a whole set of separate set of rules. And it's kind of a thing, right? Even if we want to appeal a case, we'll bring in and hire other attorneys to help us with that, just because it's kind of a specialized area. If you don't just appeal something because you don't like the verdict, you have to find a basis for it, right? If it's a guilty and you want a not guilty, you can appeal it, but it's not going to go anywhere unless you have something that you can really sink your teeth into. So on this, this issue about Maxine Waters and about her statement and about really any of the due process issues that were taking place throughout the trial, whether it's the city council settlement or Maxine Waters or anybody else sort of ranting and raving about this, I think Jacob Frey, or I think that's his name, the Minneapolis mayor, also said something before the jurors were sequestered. So, the list goes on and on. Is this going to be reversed on appeal? I highly, highly, highly doubt it, right? And I've seen a lot of commenters out there saying that, yes, it should. In all reality, criminal cases are very rarely reversed on an appeal, and you need to find something that you can sink your teeth into that was sort of a clear error on the underlying case. Right? It has to be more significant than you just didn't like the outcome, or you thought that maybe it felt unfair. So in other words, what I'm saying is, they would have to find something that Maxine Waters did that may have impacted, literally the case in one way or another. Some juror mentions it, or there's some evidence that comes to light that this did have an impact other than it was just said. Okay, we all know it was said, but what was the consequence in the courtroom on the trial? They're going to have to find something in order for that appeal to have any teeth, and I'm not sure that they're going to, which is why I think it's probably a long shot. E. Dantes says, Robert, may have missed your comments on your feeling on Chauvin. If you were on the jury, how would you have voted? Is your opinion different now than before the trial started? So it's a great question. So I would have voted not guilty on all three counts. I still stand by that statement. I thought that was the legally correct answer here, and the reason why I say that. And yes, my opinion did change. My opinion changed pretty dramatically from May of last year, where you can go back on this channel and watch me go through the George Floyd video, right? I was very upset about it. I said, this is insane. It looked like he was asphyxiated. It looked like he was killed with Chauvin's knee on the neck, right? And I am sort of spring-loaded to find fault with police officers. I am a criminal defense attorney. I know I have a bit of a blind spot on that. I know I have to affirmatively sort of, set those emotions aside and think about law enforcement and our justice system in a positive light, from time to time, just to sort of put that hat on, because I wear defense lawyer hat all day, right? I have a whole business about that. We have 20 something people here who are working towards that end. We're very good about, I'm passionate about it. So I'm sort of that disposition. So before I knew anything about the case, when I was listening to or watching the video, and that's all I knew, it looked like Chauvin murdered Floyd. No question about it, right? It was sort of my instincts right out of the gate. But I didn't know a lot back then. We know a lot more now, and we know a lot that the government's witnesses have even corroborated for us, in particular, that Dr. Baker, the government's expert witness who actually did the autopsy and filled out the medical death certificate, said specifically the cause of death was cardiopulmonary arrest as a result of a number of different things. Of those, of the things, of all the factors that were on that certificate, we had some pretty big problems that, in my opinion, create some very reasonable doubt. Not doubt that is sort of, fleshed out in, carbon monoxide poisoning or something like that. If the basis for, in my opinion, a not guilty verdict on all three counts, if I was sort of placing that or hanging my hat on carbon monoxide, I would say that was a stretch. Okay. Derek Chauvin is not innocent because carbon monoxide came out of the exhaust pipe and went into Floyd's mouth and killed Floyd, right? I don't believe that for a second. It was one of the defense theories, but it was a bad theory. But if we're going to give the defendant the benefit of the doubt in these cases, as we are required legally to do, given the fact that we have the presumption of innocence still in this country, and given the idea that we have this concept of beyond a reasonable doubt, which means if you have any doubt that is based in reason as to the defendant's innocence or guilt, if you just doubt it, I'm not positive about that, then that is enough for an acquittal. It's doubt based in reason. And when we heard the government's own expert witnesses, there was a lot of doubt there. Dr. Baker disagreed with Dr. Tobin as to the cause and mechanism, manner of death. Their own expert witnesses disagreed about that, which is why they had to bring in the cardiologist the day after Dr. Baker testified. So on the government side, their own witnesses disagreed about the cause of death. George Floyd, his arteriosclerosis combined with his hypertensive heart disease caused major problems with his heart. He already, had a lot of heart problems prior in 2019. His blood pressure was like 216 over 160, and he had a last-minute ingestion case back then. So if we're going to just analyze this from a causal factor, what was the cause of death for George Floyd? And we have the government's own expert witnesses, not Dr. Baker. There was another woman who came in, and she was a medical witness, and she said specifically, if we would have found Floyd at home dead, and we opened up his heart, we would have blamed the heart for it. It was that bad. The heart alone would have been sufficient to kill Floyd. Similarly, let's say the heart was fine. Let's say that all of that was okay. If Floyd was dead and they found 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl in his blood, that was sufficient for death as well. All of those things were bona fide contributing factors that were listed on the medical certificate, death certificate. And so if you start to analyze the different causal factors, and remember, causation was one of the key elements in all three of those charges. Before you ever talk about culpable negligence or, felony, whatever, any of those things. Assault and intent and, transferred intent and all of those things. Causation. Chauvin caused death. Chauvin caused death. Causation, I have a huge problem with it. And I think that beyond a reasonable doubt is such a high standard. There was plenty of doubt in reason in this case, based in reason in this case, that they're just, in my opinion, justifies holding that standard. I know it's not a popular opinion. I know that people disagree with it. I know the jury disagrees with it. But it is, I think, critically important that we recognize that. If Derek Chauvin put his knee on George Floyd's neck and we learn today, perfect heart, no problems with the heart, no fentanyl, no prior methamphetamine use, no last-minute ingestion, no pills in the car, no pills with saliva and DNA that came out of his mouth in the back of the police car, no 2019 prior, no heart history of being over 216 over 160. If all of those things were absent and Chauvin did what he did on Floyd, well, yeah, of course he would have killed him, right? Because that is the single causal factor of death. But that wasn't the case. We have all sorts of other factors that were sufficient to kill him. But they blame Chauvin for it because of the video and what they saw. Now, I'm a defense lawyer, so like I said, I'm spring-loaded to side with the defense. I have no love at all for Derek Chauvin, as I mentioned. And you can go back, I look at his facial expressions, and it makes my blood boil watching him because he has this smug arrogance about him. I even saw this in court, and I was I didn't comment on it as we were going through the trial, but I would see his facial expressions. And when the judge asked him if anybody promised you or threatened you or you under duress, when he was asking him specifically about not testifying, Chauvin's face was like, no, it was like a smug smirk. He's like, no, Judge, like, nobody puts me under duress. Okay. No, I'm not under duress. Like this is easy. Like, I know where this is going. And a part of me believes that, right? Why is he writing his attorney's number on his hand? He might have thought, I'm getting acquitted on all charges. And this was a blindside to him. He goes, well, I don't even know your number, bro. Let me write this down real fast. And so that sort of arrogance, I think, translated. I saw that on the video. I saw his knee going into his neck with his hands in his pocket, just looking at people. And I've seen that look on officers a lot. I see it in clients we represent. We watch body camera videos. I see arrogant, smug officers treating people like garbage all the time. And it makes my blood boil. And I have no love for Derek Chauvin at all. I'm not going to lose any sleep over the fact that he got convicted on this thing. I am him personally. Okay. Right. Derek Chauvin. I got no love for the guy. I have a lot of concerns though about how our justice system functioned in this trial, because there was plenty of reasonable doubt here. I mean, what else do you need? There's fentanyl, prior meth use, major heart problems, 90% blockage in one of the arteries. And the government's own witnesses confirmed that. They disagreed with themselves. We even had use of force experts disagree. Jody Steiger and the law professor who testified the last on the government's case. Plenty of reasonable doubt. And it's concerning to me when you have a dog pile that happens on anybody, whether it's Chauvin or anybody else, because this happens in this country where innocent people are in Chauvin's position. Truly, whether you think he's innocent or not, you might think he was, right? And that the standard has not been met. And now, this is a template. We're going to see this again. We're going to see that this type of behavior from the media, from the courts, from our politicians is okay. It's almost to be expected. And we're going to talk about this in the next segment, because Makayla is now going through the same thing. And you can already see the gears turning. The Pistons are warming up. Everybody's getting geared up for this next George Floyd season 2. Police murdering people in America, season 2. We're going to be outraged about everything. So that's my issue, right? The final outcome. All right. The jury listened to the facts. They made a decision. I respect the jurors. Okay. They heard what they heard and they made a decision, and I'm not in that jury room, and I don't know what the situation is like down there at the scene, but as a defense lawyer, I've got concerns anytime that there's a dog pile in this country, anytime that the entirety of the nation just sort of orients themselves towards one person, and we're just going to destroy that person. It reminds me of the mob, in the Colosseum or like in Gladiator. The mob is fickle, right? They're angry at this person. They're angry at that person. That's when, as a society, we have to recognize that anytime that happens, that is extremely dangerous. The person who's at the receiving end of that focus, of that laser-like visceral reaction from a country, they need protection and defense more than anybody in this country. When everybody is totally aligned to destroy somebody, that's when they need protection the most. We got to make sure that we are upholding the mechanisms that protect our justice system at that moment, because at that moment, that's when people want to start to bend the rules. I already saw that in the Floyd case. I saw a lot of people, and a lot of these people are Hollywood commentators and things, who were saying, well, what do we even need a trial for in the George Floyd case? We already know what happened. We saw the video. That should be all that we need. I'm going, no. That's not how this works. Our legal system, we still have due process, the presumption of innocence, the right to trial, the right to counsel, and a lot of other very important fundamental rights in this country. But people want to just bend the rules because they think that they're not that important. We don't need them in this case, so let's just get rid of them. Well, what happens the next time this goes down the pike? What happens the next time we have a person in that situation who is in fact innocent and society wants to just rub their faces in the ground? Well, we can't let them do it, and we're not. And so that's why I just want to make sure that we're holding the line on the reasonable doubt standard. I thought there was plenty of reasonable doubt in the Chauvin case, even though I have no love whatsoever for Chauvin himself. I have love for the reasonable doubt standard and the presumption of innocence, and I'm not sure that we saw much of that in this trial. Justice First says, yesterday you seemed somewhat clinical and quick to move on, but for those of us traumatized, to think a man who is not guilty as charged could end up doing significant time, could you offer any tidbits of hope for Chauvin or for our justice system? So hopefully Justice First, I sort of just kind of went through that a little bit. I have a lot of concerns for our justice system. I will tell you that. I tend to be kind of a hopeful person, but I'm not real sure what's happening right now, because there is a big segment of this country that is sort of reorienting towards a different perspective here. And I'm gonna let me table this one, because I'm gonna tell you what I think might be happening in the next segment, because we're seeing a very similar situation to Floyd's case sort of now bubble up. And I'm seeing a very coordinated, sort of orchestrated conversation going back the other direction from people in very high positions of power, like Valerie Jarrett. And I think that they may be telegraphing where this justice system thing might be going. So let me table that one. Derek Chauvin, I think it's close to the end of the line for him. If I had to guess, yes, he'll appeal it, but I don't have much optimism that there's going to be anything that the appeals court does on reverse, unless, right, anything could happen. A juror could come out, a week from now and say, somebody in there was threatening me and whatever. And that would obviously, all bets are off the table at that point in time. But the justice system it's on rocky waters right now. And we're going to explain, I think, why in a little bit. LT13 says, did you see Floyd's girlfriend was Daunte Wright's dean or something in high school? No, I did not see that. No, that's crazy. That is a weird coincidence. I did not see that, but that is an interesting little tidbit, LT. We have Sharon Quidney in the house, says, this is an indication of a real change. All right, the death of due process, equal protection, and especially the presumption of innocence. It's the triumph of mob rule. Yeah, it certainly feels like that, right? And you see a city that created an environment supported by their local politicians that made it very hard to provide a fair trial, in my opinion. The jurors literally were walking back and from that building, from the court building, in the middle of this whole environment. It's hard not to be persuaded. You have Patriot Musk says, Rob, are you happy with the verdict? If I can be honest about it, I'm sort of indifferent really about the whole thing. I'm not happy or sad about it. I sort of expected that. I was expecting kind of a guilty on all counts. I sort of felt that the wave of the country was going that direction. As soon as I heard that it was decided in like 8 hours, I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be guilty across the board. Now, legally, I said yesterday, I think the correct outcome, if I were a juror, I would say the correct outcome is there's plenty of doubt, and I would have voted to acquit on all three charges based on the evidence that we heard. And I spent a lot of time covering it, and I've got clips and everything. So we may be actually trying to assemble sort of a highlight reel of the trial, and maybe we'll make even an argument in there. But we'll see. I can't say I'm happy or disappointed about it. It's sort of clinical. I sort of watched it, expecting that this was probably going to be the outcome. I would say I'm quite jaded about how I feel about how people interpret reasonable doubt and the presumption of innocence. And I've experienced that regularly as a criminal defense attorney, right? People sort of presume that you're guilty and that you have to convince the court and the jurors that you're innocent. And that's not the case at all. And the judge can tell people that, can tell them to their face, hey, you can't, this person is innocent. And they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And they just don't get it, right? Because they've been so conditioned by movies and law enforcement and the courts to think that anybody who's sort of on the receiving end in a position of power, if the power structure is kind of crashing down on one particular person, everybody thinks, well, they deserve it. That's the system, right? They must have done something wrong. And then we have to sort of try to reverse that as defense lawyers when really it's not our burden. It's supposed to be on them, but practically it's not. It's on us. So when I see stuff like this happen, I have a lot of concern for our justice system. And I also have concern that I think that people in this case don't really realize what they're cheering. It's kind of a strange, the hats are reversed. The roles are reversed in this case. You have let's say the African-American community, right? You have BLM, you have anybody who's out there protesting for Daunte Wright, George Floyd, whatever. They are thrilled that the prosecutors won in this case. And I'm thinking, like today, those same prosecutors, that same prosecutor's office, they are prosecuting some of the protesters. They're prosecuting some of, other drug offenses, like George Floyd has been was basically facing drug charges or counterfeiting charges or disorderly conduct charges. In other words, the police are going to go out and arrest more people from their communities, and they're just thrilled with the prosecutor's office, which is sort of like a reversal, right? Typically, the left doesn't like law enforcement today anyways. And the right doesn't like defense attorneys. They're all in favor of prosecution and law enforcement. So now the traditional conservatives are sort of going, this is ridiculous. What do you mean the government can come out here and do this? They can just convict an innocent person. And this is what I've been saying for a long time. Yes, they can. conservatives, this is sort of a wake-up call. This is what this looks like on a regular basis. The government has a ton of power, and citizens in our society, they don't even hesitate. They'll convict you all day long. If you're a conservative and you're thinking that the reasonable doubt standard or the presumption of innocence is a proper check on a tyrannical, authoritarian, overly bureaucratic, endless power, monopolistic government, if you think that those things are going to protect you from it, I got a rude wake-up call for you. And this may have been that. Okay, you saw what happened. You saw that there was plenty of doubt thrown out there, but the system just said, nah, bye, not even going to listen to you. And the citizens in the jury panel took them 8 hours. Didn't even have to think about it. Jen McClellan says Pelosi saying Floyd's name is synonymous with justice must really sting for the victims of his armed robberies. I don't think he deserved to die, but he's being made out as some kind of a saint, and that just ain't right. Yeah, I mean, he's got a square now. They're going to pass a bill now, and I agree with you. I don't think that he deserves to die, but is he Saint America? No, no, he was not. And so when people get out there and they start trying to make something out of nothing, and they want to puff everything up into something that it isn't, are we having conversations in reality land anymore? We have Sharon Quidney says, you ask what these people want. They want a totalitarian communist dictatorship with racial injustice as the basis for the revolution instead of class struggle. This is stated agenda and the founders of BLM. Yeah, so I think that is actually exactly right? This sort of racial struggle, this revolution. And I think you sort of hit it on the head. I was going to get to this in a later segment, but the idea would be that law enforcement is just no longer legitimate. It's not a legitimate function of the state anymore. And it's sort of dividing on a racial barrier. We have the white police officers who are part of the white patriarchy, a part of that original sin that Joe Biden talks about, part of the stain on America. That's white law enforcement officers. That's our current justice system. And so what we're going to see when we get to the Bryant shooting is this predisposition to default to anything an officer does is wrong. Okay, because we're going to see that in the next segment. He shoots a woman that has a knife and is in the process of stabbing somebody. And this officer is getting skewered about it. When in my opinion, it was the right thing to do. But the question is, should an officer be doing anything? Should an officer be responding to this stuff? That's the logical extension of defund the police. The cop, look, if the cop shouldn't have even been there, then he shouldn't have shot, right? And that's actually where this is going. All right, we're going to get there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Good question. We have Norovira says, all those comments are very inflammatory to all the people who thought Chauvin was not guilty and Floyd was a dead man walking. With the amount of drugs he did and his health would have killed him within months. He was not going to go home today. And if it's not enough that his family got $27 million of taxpayers' money. Horrible thing to say, but they are not unhappy about the way he died. The other option would be that he would have died in prison in the next few months. Yeah, that's a spicy comment there, Norovira, as is the case. You got a lot of spice, and we're glad that you're here. We have Hack Consulting says, thank you, Nancy Pelosi, for finally being a truthful politician. Glad to see you openly showing how you turn everything into a political weapon. Thanks, George Floyd. Thanks for dying. Thanks for dying, George. We have Ma Fox says, I'm all too glad to say the left is being horrendously hypocritical, being happy with this opinion. I actually care about justice reform. Felony murder rules are one of the first on the chopping block. Minnesota's felony murder needs to go, period. They'd have agreed with this, but hey, now that is helping convict Chauvin. Yeah, look, I agree with you, Ma. I think that you're right. It's kind of a weird thing that something that is just a tragedy across the board is people were jumping out of their seats. Yeah, man's going to prison for killing another man. Yeah, what are we celebrating that for? And then it's sort of a premature celebration. Like it's a celebration that there was justice done, but then they all come out and say, well, this isn't justice. This is just the start of something else. Okay, well, then what are you so happy for? We have Blazing Gun says, can an appellate court declare a mistrial or retry Chauvin, or is that not legally possible? It is legally possible. I mean, basically what they do is they remand it back down. It's called a remand. So you'll appeal an issue. You'll say, the judge, let's say, for example, after the settlement came out, the judge, I don't think, did the judge voir dire everybody again? Let's say, I don't know about the settlement, but let's say about the judge did voir dire everybody again. the judge started to impanel people. The settlement came out. The judge called several people back, questioned them again because he thought it was appropriate. Then the trial moved forward. Okay, so let's take that as a standard. When there's a big news story, the judge brought the jurors back and asked them questions about it. Hey, did you hear about this $27 million settlement? Several jurors said, yeah, we did. And I think somebody said, yeah, I did, and I'm not going to be impartial anymore. Judge booted that person. Okay, so in jury selection, judge gets a big news story, thinks it's appropriate to re-question the jurors, and then throw some of them out when they said they can't be impartial anymore. Then the trial is ongoing, and this happens again. Maxine Waters runs her mouth, starts screaming about, get more confrontational unless there's a guilty verdict. Trial is still going on. And at that point, the jury, I don't think, has been sequestered yet, right? I think it was like in the middle of closing arguments. So now, at this time, the judge, does he do what he did the last time this happened and re-voir dire all the jurors? No, he didn't do that, right? So, well, no, I told him to not watch the news. I told him to stay off the internet, so we're just going to leave it at that. Do you know why he did that? Because he probably knows that if he would have called them in, somebody would have said, yeah. And then, or maybe several of them, and then he would have had to throw them off the bench, and they would have had to have been a mistrial. And the case was so far down the line that judge didn't want to do this over again. Once you sort of get over the tipping point in the trial, now it's like, well, we're just going to finish this thing. If there's a problem, the appeals court can deal with it. So that's what this judge did. And so if there's really any argument, I think that is a pretty good one. That the judge, when there was a big news story, he asked the jurors about it once. Then it happened again. He didn't do it again. That's a different standard. Why is that? Appeal, say the jurors may have been, improperly biased. The judge broke his own standards. Say we want a new trial. If the appeals court agrees, remand that sucker back down. Do this whole thing again. Maybe in a different venue. Probably get a different verdict. Hack Consulting says, the only thing I think we need to change is that no one understands beauty or stops to look for it. Everyone is trying to change the world. Why don't we stop and find something nice to appreciate, whether it is related to anything or we'll never see again? Why don't we just take a second to see something and then try to figure out why it caught our eye? It's a beautiful comment there, Hack Consulting. And there's a rule in this book I think it's Beyond Order by Jordan Peterson. I think it's Rule 5, but he talks about creating one room in your home that's the most beautiful room of anything that you have in your life. It's something like that. It's obviously put much better. Create one room in your home that's the most beautiful room in your home. And it's really a part of this concept, right? As human beings, we sort of grow up and mature out of beauty. We stop looking for it. You take a 3 or 4-year-old, right? Everything is beautiful. Everything they see is mesmerizing. They're awestruck everywhere they turn. Everything you turn on, everything you hand, oh my gosh, everything's beautiful and amazing. Then as we get older, I've seen that before, right? The Grand Canyon, who cares, right? There's a river, and no big deal. And you just kind of ignore it. So what Jordan Peterson says is, hey, you got to get in touch with that beauty. Go find a piece of artwork and spend some money on it. Spend some time on this thing. Go and, go to an art gallery, look around, spend 10 hours looking at these things, find something that is beautiful, check in with it every day. And I'm in the process of doing that right now based on that rule. I think it's Rule 5. Check it out. Great book, Beyond Order from Jordan Peterson. Nadar Blasier says, maybe this will wake people up to finally realize that innocent until proven guilty hasn't been a standard for us little folks for a long time now. Maybe all the media coverage will make people mad enough to do something about it. Well, I don't know, man. I think that they're kind of doing cartwheels over this stuff. And not good. Not good because it's a standard. That standard is going to be applied in other cases. Okay, the next time it's not going to be Chauvin in the defendant's chair. It's going to be somebody like George Floyd. Not that many cops get charged with crimes. A lot of people who are addicted to opioids and have prior criminal records and who are passing counterfeit bills, yeah, they get charged a lot more than the Derek Chauvins are. And if the burden of proof and the presumption of innocence are watered down in this case, guess where that ends up? In the other cases. And they're going to have to deal with those consequences. All right, so that is Derek Chauvin. Long segment. We got another one to get to. We got another shooting. We just finished one, and we already got to start talking about another one. So here we've got, switch my slides over here. We have another shooting. We're talking about Miss Bryant. Ma'Khia is her name. Ma'Khia Bryant was shot and killed yesterday, right on the verge of the Chauvin verdict. And it was something that sort of captured a lot of people's attention in the media. And they're already started to say things like, well, hey, Chauvin hasn't even been convicted yet. And already we have another white officer killing another black person. And so the media went into hyperdrive, hyperventilation mode, as they usually do. And we want to break this down because there's a lot going on here. And we're starting to see some people who are part of the power establishment, sort of, it's people who are part of big think tanks, and they're already starting to craft this narrative that the cop was wrong in this situation. Even though, if you watch this, as we're going to do, well, you can be the judge of this, right? You can tell me whether or not this officer's shooting was legitimate or not. And so we're going to go through this in a little bit of a reverse order. You may have already seen the video in this case, and we're going to play it. We are going to show you the body camera. Now, a little content warning in this segment. Of course, we're talking about a young woman who is 16 years old who's not with us anymore. She's shot and killed. And so, we are going to have some imagery. We're going to talk about some of these concepts. I just wanted to forewarn you. When we do get to the body cameras, her face is blacked out, and the moment of the shooting is clipped out, and everything else is pretty blurred. It's pretty well sanitized, but I just want to give you that little bit of a content warning. We're not going to spend a lot of time going through the scene, but we are going to be talking a lot about the reaction. So just be cognizant of that. That is the content warning for the segment. Now, the body camera. This is what let me frame that out a little bit better. We're going to go back through this sort of in real time. We're going to rewind the clock back a little bit and say, well, what happened back at 4:30 yesterday as this was all unfolding? Because I want to show you sort of the timeline, the sequence of events. We had a big issue, and then we had a lot of reactions trickling in before even the evidence was out, before the body camera of the shooting was even released. So let's work our way through this. Here we saw yesterday from 10 TV that officers were called to Legion Lane north of Chatterton Road at about 4:30 p.m. for a disturbance, right? And that was right around the same time that the Chauvin verdict was being announced. According to Interim Chief Michael Woods, caller reported females were trying to stab them. Dispatcher tried to obtain more information, but the call was disconnected. Footage released from the police came from the first officer on scene. In the video, the teen appears to attempt to stab two people with a knife before the officer fires his weapon. What? So that doesn't sound like that's unjustified, right? That's somebody attacking somebody with a knife. Chief Woods said officers immediately assessed her for injuries, called for a medic, and gave her CPR. During this time, an officer can be heard saying she came at her with a knife. The teen was taken to Mount Carmel East in critical condition, where she was later pronounced dead. Unclear whether anyone else was injured. Though police declined to release her name, the mother identified her as Ma'Khia Bryant. Okay, so interesting spelling, M-A''Khia. So I'm going to probably butcher that throughout the show. So Ma'Khia Bryant. And, this was unfolding yesterday. Then we started to see some reaction. And a lot of this reaction was very similar to what we saw during the Floyd incident. We have somebody, people are posting on Twitter right away, hey, fly in heaven, baby girl, rest in heaven. The police killed my daughter today in Columbus, Ohio, right? So this person, Paula Bryant, hopped right on Facebook right after it happened. The police killed my daughter today in Columbus, Ohio, right? And Paula Bryant, right? That's mom. So first thing mom does after her daughter is gunned down is get on Facebook. All right. 45 minutes later, here we are. Fly high in heaven, baby girl. Rest in heaven. The police killed my daughter today. On Facebook yesterday. Then we see around the scene, a lot of protesters start showing up. So we've got this guy with a bullhorn just ready to rock and roll. Protesters soon convened at the crime scene and called for action after witnesses described what led to the shooting. Right, so everybody's pouring in there now right around the scene. This took place outside of a home. And so we're going to see more of this. Then we have somebody who's basically auditioning now, right? So the media is now showing up. We've got cameras. This is before body cameras are even released or before we even really know what's going on, right? This just happened. It's still light outside. This happened during the afternoon, 4:30. It's still light out. Media is there, and this is Ma'Khia Bryant's aunt, Hazel Bryant, and she's auditioning, right, for the media. So she's out there now screaming about they shot her niece essentially, and we've got everybody taking pictures. We got the microphones, media's there, she's out there performing. And look, that's what it looks like to me. And I know that may sound insensitive, but your niece was just shot and killed. What are you doing right now? Are you ranting to the media? What are you doing? Like, why are you not with your family? Same situation. Here is the mother who is now giving a statement right after this happened. The police are still there. She was just shot and killed, right here, as far as I can tell. Right, the police vehicle's right there. There's crime tape. Mom just kind of walks outside of the house and wants to give a statement.
Ma'Khia was named after a male prophet in the Bible. She was a very loving, peaceful, little girl. She was 16 years old. She was an honor roll student. And Ma'Khia had a motherly nature about her. She promoted peace. And that's something that I want to always be remembered.
So, yeah, so mom, daughter just got shot like 4 times. Mom comes out and says, hey, excuse me, news camera, are you over? Let me give you a statement. And the news just runs right over here, right in your face. It's a weird thing that everybody's just so media hungry as a 16-year-old girl just got shot. I don't get it. I mean, all right. Then we saw, outside of the police headquarters, crowds forming last night. So everybody's pouring in, right? We've got a new shooting. Everybody's got to go be a part of it and protest. Here are some more people. The whole damn system is something. Can't see what that is, but they're forming a line of shields right outside the police headquarters. So they're screaming, say your name, Ma'Khia Bryant. Say your name, Ma'Khia Bryant. And it's not just me who was looking at this stuff and saying, this is really weird. There's a strange thing happening right now because everybody is seeming to be piling on this stuff. Now, ordinarily, I expect the media, yes, to go out there and pick a side and then, bloviate for that side until they're blue in the face. But this was sort of a different level. And I want to share with you a blog post over from Allah Pundit at hotair.com. Very, very, I like to read his stuff. I disagree with him a lot of the time, but he's on the money on this one. And he wrote, some media outlets and even senators sure were eager to make the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting a story about race, which is exactly what I was noticing. He said some members of our fair and balanced media didn't wait for details to decide what the Bryant story was really about. And I like how he does this, right? Really about, both of those are capitalized. Really about, like RA, right? Because that's just what the media does, right? Every single story has an ulterior motive. On the very day that Chauvin was convicted for the murder during an arrest of Floyd, another incident in which white officers had killed a black girl, a minor no less, had dropped in their lap, fate had handed them an opportunity to declare that while justice had been done in the Floyd case, unjust police brutality toward African Americans would not only continue, but had already added to its body count before Chauvin had even left the courtroom. The narrative was too good to check, Allah writes. So they didn't. The story was about race first and foremost, they concluded. And so he took some screenshots of this stuff, right? Which is something that I like to do here. And he summarized, and here's NPR, says Columbus police shoot and kill black teenage girl. Like, that's a headline. Right? Not an armed teenage girl, not a teenage girl attacking another girl, not police shoot and kill attacker who was threatening to murder somebody, right? They shoot and kill a black teenage girl. Whoa, what? On the day that Derek Chauvin just got convicted, the police shoot and kill a black teenager girl? It's terrible. Then the Daily Beast does it, right? Columbus police release body camera footage and fatal shooting of black teen. Axios does it. Columbus police officer fatally shoots black teenage girl. Slate does it. Black teenage girl is shot and killed by Columbus police. So does the Washington Post, garbage newspaper. Ohio police fatally shoot black teenager girl just before the Chauvin verdict. They are all salivating at this story. Oh my God, this is perfect. Chauvin just got convicted. Some white cop just killed a black teenage girl. Like one after the other. All the blog writers at the Post are salivating over this stuff. Let's go back to Allah Pundit. He says, the Post headline is especially egregious since it was published this morning. Okay, they published this morning. This one, Ohio police fatally shoot and kill black teenage girl just before Chauvin verdict. They published that today, not yesterday. So they have even less excuse for not viewing the body cam footage before drawing a conclusion. Gerald Bayer, according to this person, notes that the Post story never states that Bryant had a knife in her hand, even though it's clearly visible in the video. So they're just flat out lying to you, right? I mean, that's a fact that is obviously evident. We can see it. The Washington Post, which is supposed to be a newspaper, a legitimate newspaper, don't even mention that. They acknowledge that, quote, she lunged at someone and that a knife was found next to her after she fell, but they'll allow, by way of reporting, all they'll allow is that she was trying to stab someone that police claimed that she did. What if I told you that you could wait to report on facts until you verified them? Journalists who have occasion to go back and realize that they have reported some key facts wrong in the heat of a breaking story should have a little more humility in judging people whose jobs involve making graver decisions in less time with no ability to edit their own mistakes later. Isn't that interesting? Right? So Dan McLaughlin is saying, hey, writers get to go back and edit their material. Cops don't. Dan McLaughlin, who's a little more charitable to the press than I'm willing to be, jumping to conclusions about the Bryant shooting wasn't an honest mistake, says Allah, based on having received bad facts. It was a conclusion they eagerly leaped to because they had a storyline they were motivated to push, enough so that they were willing to run initially with Bryant's aunt's account of the shooting, even though she didn't witness it herself, right? That was the same woman who I showed you was auditioning earlier, out there in front of the media, ranting and raving about what happened. She wasn't even there. Didn't know anything about it. They killed my niece. They shot my niece, blah, blah, blah. She wasn't even there. But the media was there lapping it up, just soaking this all up. So let's get into what actually happened. This is from the interim chief of police, I believe, is now giving a press conference. And he's going to tell us about the officer, right? He's going to introduce us to the officer. Officer's name is Nicholas, and he's going to identify them so we can use his name. But I'm going to show you why we're going to blank out this officer's name in a minute, which is not something I traditionally do, but I'm going to show you why we do that. Here is this chief of police now giving us a little bit of background on what happened.
The first video we're going to show you is from Officer Nicholas Reardon. Officer Reardon was working a one-officer car. He was hired in December of 2019. He's currently assigned to Zone 2, second shift, and he is the officer that discharged his firearm.
All right, so they are identifying him, and there are people out there already calling for this guy's head, which is a little bit concerning, of course. But I want to show you, this is the video, right? So this is the video of Officer Reardon getting out of his car. We're not going to watch the whole thing. It's about 4 minutes, I think. We're going to clip the beginning and end of it. Now, this is where the shooting happens. So content warning, it's coming next, but it is highly edited. So you're not going to see the actual shooting. You are going to hear some profanity that has not been edited out. And then you're going to see a lot of blurs around, but you're still going to be able to make sense of this. And a couple things I want to point out. First and foremost, this officer is moving quickly, right? He gets out of the car. This thing is already in motion. And you're going to see that this is not just like a two-party fight. There are several people involved in this, and this officer is having to sort of assess the threats extremely quickly. You're going to see on the back right or near the vehicle. So let me just show you right now before I start playing it. So this is Officer Reardon. He's going to be coming around here. He's going to be sort of, pacing around this area, coming upon the scene. And then you're going to notice a couple things happen very quickly. So somebody's going to sort of fall in the ground over here on the other side of the vehicle, and he's going to sort of assess that quickly. Then somebody lunges up, and this woman here in pink is going to be pressed up against this wall, and then Micaiah is going to be sort of, engaging with her in this direction. So the officer's going to run around here, and you're going to see a gentleman, somebody over here, kicking somebody else. So like somebody's running over here and just like lobbing a kick. And then there's somebody in the background here, puts his hands up. And so it's kind of mayhem. It's kind of madness. This officer in this entire scene is able to act very quickly. And we're going to break down what happens. We're going to watch this first through and through. Then we're going to go back and we've got a freeze frame of one of the most important part of everything that we're looking at. So here is the video from Officer Reardon. Once again, content warning. Nobody dies in this video, right? She dies later at the hospital. We don't see the shooting. You hear it, and all of the facial expressions are blanked out. Obviously, she's not with us anymore, but her face is blanked out for privacy because she is underage. Here is the shooting.
Hey! What's going on? What's going on? Hey! Get down! Get down! Get down! Get down!
All right, so we saw that, right? Happens very, very quickly. I'm not going to play it again, but the key one that you want to see, the key frame that comes out is this clip. Okay, there's a knife right there, and this is, going in the direction of this woman. And you saw that altercation, and she's going to stab her, right? And she sort of makes several attempts, starts swinging a little bit, and she puts her hands up. Now this woman also has a dog in her hands. So she drops the dog, kind of protects herself. And then the shooting happens. And then, of course, Ma'Khia is hit and then sort of drops to the ground over here. Then we have another video from another body camera from another officer who's walking with the woman in pink. And you're going to hear them sort of walking back to the car. Then you'll hear the woman say, yeah, she came at me with a knife. That other officer stopped her, right? So she's sort of the victim of this assault. And she's saying, no, he's like, she was going to stab me. And he stopped. So the victim here is sort of, agreeing with the idea that this officer essentially saved her life. Let's listen in.
With a knife?
Yeah, so he got her.
Shoot a girl. And she ain't come at you with no knife. She fucking came at me.
All right, one more time.
With a knife?
Yeah, so he got her.
Shoot a girl.
All right, so he got her, right? He got her. She was coming at you with a knife. Something happened with that clip. I don't know why. But yes, he got her, right? And so the officer already came out. The chief of police came out, identified the officer. It's this guy here. Daily Mail is now, publishing his picture. I'm blocking out his face today. And traditionally, I don't block out officers' faces, and that's typically because I'm calling them bad popo, and they deserve the attention. But what we're going to see here is that there are people now calling that this guy is, quote, next. So there are actually people out there who are saying this guy's next, right? We're going to get you next. And so it's almost threatening. And I've got a screenshot of what that looks like here in a minute. So we're not going to contribute to that mob justice, because this, in my opinion, was a perfectly lawful shooting. And what we've got here is the officer. And so, they're saying Officer Reardon standing on the scene, shooting and killing Bryant. He's been on the force since December 2019. So, relatively new officer. And, in this picture, it kind of looks like he's got his hand on his gun as we have a woman laying dead here. And he's having a conversation over here, explaining to somebody. And if I remove these blocks, it's not a flattering picture. It looks like this guy just like, took care of business over there, right? And, I'm certain that that's not how he feels, but these pictures are, we saw what the George Floyd picture looked like. We saw what that did and the power there, and how these pictures and videos and images all get manipulated. And so they were kind of doing that here. He kind of looks like he's just posted up, and we see feet from a dead person lying right there as he's looking off into the distance. And so you can see this narrative is already starting to fester. Here is another statement about what's going to happen next. So is this officer going to get charged with a crime? Who knows anymore, right? I don't think so. Shouldn't, in my opinion, but we'll see. This is the chief of police now telling us what's going to happen next.
Ma'Khia Bryant has been positively identified as the 16-year-old killed in this incident, and law enforcement has been in contact with her family. As I said last night, the important step now is for BCI to conduct an independent and transparent investigation. The Columbus Division of Police will assist them, but we will not interfere in any investigative process that they have. Our role is to provide them the information that they request and do so in a timely manner. We will not interfere. We will not provide input. We will allow them to conduct their investigation. At the conclusion of their investigation, that investigation is sent to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, where it will be presented to a Franklin County grand jury. And eventually, the packet will come to the Columbus Division of Police, and we will review that incident for policy compliance or violations.
All right, so there's going to be a full investigation, as there should be, right? There always, anytime somebody dies, like we should never just go back and say, well, look good to me. How about you, Lou? Yeah, John, that look good. All right, we'll wrap this up. Put a note. Did you note the file? Yeah, note the file. It deserves an investigation. It deserves a review, and I think that this officer is going to be completely cleared. Now, the media is doing what they can to sort of twist this story, as we've already seen, and it's just, it continues. Take a look at what the New York Times did. So here's Ben Crump over on Twitter, and this was George Floyd's attorney, if you recall, the family's attorney, and he posted, says, as we breathe a collective sigh of relief today, a community in Columbus felt the sting of another police shooting as Columbus police killed an unarmed 15-year-old black girl named Ma'Khia Bryant. Another child is lost, another hashtag justice for Ma'Khia Bryant, right? Which is obviously not accurate. He posted that 3 hours ago. She did not, she was in fact armed, and she was actually attacking another girl. So that's not accurate. Now, Contrite Bird said, holy S, look at what the New York Times did. They sanitized Crump's tweet by removing the unarmed lie. Keep in mind, the New York Times story comes after the footage is released and, in fact, references it. Just insanely dishonest. So the New York Times takes Ben Crump's story and says, as we breathe a collective sigh of relief, we felt the sting of another shooting. So they basically just clipped out this unarmed as we experienced another sting of police shooting. So they just got rid of the unarmed part, right? Another child lost. Another hashtag. So they're covering for themselves. NAACP came out. Another black child was killed by the police. Our condolences to the family. Here is NAACP. They said, while many of us anxiously awaited the verdict of the George Floyd case, a black child was killed at the hands of law enforcement. Moments before the verdict, Ma'Khia Bryant was shot 4 times in the chest. She died shortly thereafter. The officer in the Floyd case was found guilty on all 3 counts. What should have been a momentary sigh of relief, but however, it resulted in further unrest in Columbus. Shortly after the events unfolded, NAACP president offered condolences. They viewed the body camera footage released to the public, and we have several unanswered questions. What threat did this 16-year-old girl pose to the police officer? Okay, this is an actual question in this document. The NAACP is asking, what threat did this 16-year-old girl pose to the police officer? What steps were taken to de-escalate the situation? Why wasn't a taser or pepper spray used? Finally, how does a call for help result in the death of a 16-year-old child? We demand answers and accountability for the death of Ma'Khia Bryant. That is the NAACP. That is a massive organization. Basically saying here, the cop should have let her stab the other girl, I guess, or pepper sprayed her. Did you see how fast that whole situation unfolded? Like in a matter of seconds. She pulls a gun out. She's in the middle of you saw the image. You saw the still, right? So he should have pepper sprayed her or tackled her or something. I mean, I guess that's an argument. Did he know she was 16 at the time? If he would have pepper sprayed her, do you think that would have resulted in the cessation of the stabbing? I don't know. Could have. Let's take a look. We have Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther. Let's see what he has to say.
Did Ma'Khia Bryant need to die yesterday? How did we get here? This is a failure on part of our community. Some are guilty, but all of... Did Ma'Khia Bryant need to die yesterday? How did we get here? This is a failure on part of our community. Some are guilty, but all of us are responsible.
Okay. All right. All of us are responsible for that. Some are guilty? What is he talking? Is he saying that this cop is guilty for this thing? All right, here's Jen Psaki over at the White House.
Ma'Khia Bryant by the Columbus Police is tragic. She was a child. We're thinking of her friends and family and the communities that are hurting and grieving her loss. We know that police violence disproportionately impacts Black and Latino people and communities, and that Black women and girls, like Black men and boys, experience higher rates of police violence. We also know that there are particular vulnerabilities that children in foster care like Ma'Khia face, and her death came, as you noted, just as America was hopeful of a step forward after the traumatic and exhausting trial of Derek Chauvin and the verdict that was reached. So our focus is on working to address systemic racism and implicit bias head-on, and of course to passing laws and legislation that will put much needed reforms into place at police departments around the country.
So yet again, this is about race, right? Racial injustice, racial inequity, whatever the heck she was talking about there, is going to be the centerpiece of this whole thing, right? Look, I am not in favor of a 16-year-old girl being shot and killed. What I am in favor of is not charging an officer with a crime or anybody with a crime that isn't a crime that they didn't deserve, right? And this officer was stopping a stabbing from happening in real time. It's bizarre that this is coming out, that we're now asking questions about this. What if the officer didn't shoot her and she got stabbed? Would they be okay with that? What if Ma'Khia is still here, but the other woman's dead because the officer, pepper sprayed her or something, or didn't react quickly? And why did they call the police in the first place? If they don't want an officer to come out there and stop a stabbing, then why did they call the police? If they want to have a knife fight, if they want to just have a good old-fashioned night fight in their neighborhood, why did several people call the police in the first place? We have some interesting reactions over on Twitter. We have defund and abolish the police, refund our communities. Bree Newsom says, teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. So I guess this one should have just kept going. I personally have never been in a knife fight, even when I was a teenager. Don't know anybody who was in a knife fight. Didn't grow up in a particularly privileged middle school. I did go to a nice high school. There's no question about that. No knife fights there, but I hung out with mostly people from other high schools. So no knife fights there either. Have you ever been in a knife fight? You sort of, throwing blades with people? I don't know what she's talking about. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. So you do not need the police to show up. Well, then why'd they call them? Several people called. There were at least 2 911 calls over there. So they called them. Y'all need help. I mean that sincerely. So apparently this woman grew up where there's just knife fights going on all over the place. And Valerie Jarrett is also weighing in on this. Remember her? She was part of the Obama team. Valerie Jarrett is an American businesswoman, former government official. She served as senior advisor to President Barack Obama, an assistant to the president for public engagement. Then she served as the Obama-Biden Transition Project chair, and she's the president of the Obama Foundation. Right? So this is a woman who is very high up in the power echelon, not as an elected person, but as an appointed person as part of the Obama-Biden administration. She says a black teenage girl named Ma'Khia Bryant was killed because a police officer immediately decided to shoot her multiple times in order to break up a knife fight. Demand accountability and fight for justice. Just because an officer can use deadly force, she said, does not mean the officer should. Let's spend more time responsibly training them to de-escalate violent situations, and if force is required, use the minimum force necessary. Here's the ACLU now chiming in. She was 16 years old and had her entire life ahead of her. For the second time in less than a week, we are collectively mourning a child killed by the police. We'll say it again. A system that kills children with impunity cannot be reformed. Ma'Khia Bryant should still be alive today. That's from the ACLU. They're going to go after this cop. They're going to try to indict this guy or kill him. Here is LeBron James posted this to his 50 million followers, 49.6 million followers on Twitter. Said, posted the picture of the officer, says, "You're next." Hashtag accountability with the clock ticking, right? Like, we're going to come and get you, which is why I blocked his face out. If we have active threats now against anybody, I can't communicate that on this channel. No way. Doesn't matter who it is. So we have an active threat here from LeBron James. You're next. Hashtag accountability. Post his picture on the internet to 49.6 million followers. And ultimately, he deleted it, so you'll see this, but not before it got 6,668 retweets, 4,362 quote retweets, 44,000 likes. So what that means to you, non-Twitterers, is a lot of people saw this, okay? A lot. Many, many millions of people saw that. So that's LeBron James now. You're next. Coming after these officers for stopping somebody who was in the middle of stabbing somebody else. And then we have over on MSNBC News, they are also unhappy about this. Let's listen in and see how they're framing this entire conversation.
Brian, when we talked earlier today, and I said, this doesn't make me happy. It's not satisfactory. It's not justice. This doesn't necessarily change unless there's some sort of radical reform in policing. And what happened 45 minutes later? Ma'Khia Bryant, a 16-year-old girl in Columbus, Ohio, called the police for help. An officer was on the scene, and in 22 seconds, he shot her dead. An honor roll student who's making TikTok videos on makeup and hair. This hasn't stopped. And I want to be really clear about how critical this is, not just from the emotional standpoint, from the policy standpoint, and from the national standpoint. There is nobody in America who was not paying attention to today's trial.
All right, so he goes on and he says everybody was watching the Chauvin trial, these cops too, so they know what they were doing. You know, anytime they pull their gun, they know exactly what they're doing. And he wanted to kill that girl because she's a racist white cop, right? This is where this is going. This cop is going to they're going to try to skewer this guy. And it was one of the cleanest shoots that I have seen that we have covered here. She was in the motion, like it was a split-second shot. And that other woman would have been you saw the still. Oh my gosh. All right, let's take a look at some questions over from our locals community, which is the place to be. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com if you want to support the show and ask a question. First in is Hack Consulting says, when I first saw the mother, I think she felt like she was winning the lottery. Wanted to get some grifting cash. Yeah, right? $27 million is a nice payday. You have a family that wants a piece of that. It makes me sick to say that, but that's what it looked like, right? They were out there auditioning in front of the media. The media shows up. They're all running with this. This is a big production on the back of a 16-year-old girl who was stabbing somebody. LT13 says, did you read that her aunt reported she was living in a foster home on that street? I also heard, I heard that. I didn't confirm that, but yeah, I did read that. Also heard that Biden says she was in a foster system. Yeah, so the mom doesn't even raise her. The mom just wanted to, just go out there and get in front of the cameras. Pinky2 says, is this just pushing shootings and even fake moving events to take all guns and getting our minds off of the real issues? I'm not sure if it's anything that sort of masterminded, orchestrated, conspiratorial or whatever, but I think I see where this is going. And the takeaway is that everything the cops do is essentially wrong, right? They shouldn't show up. They shouldn't have even been there. And it's really buttressing the defund the police movement, because this cop showed up to do a cop thing, to stop a crime in progress, to save and preserve lives. We have the defense of others in this country. There's a concept that says that you can use lethal force to defend somebody against lethal force. If somebody's going to kill somebody else, you can stop that person from committing that homicide, from committing that murder. Especially for cops. That's kind of one of their primary functions, is to go stop bad people doing bad things. This cop didn't know she was 16. All he sees is a woman attacking another woman with a knife. Draws, fires, and now he's going to get charged with a crime, potentially. Pinky2 says, I had seen this shooting. Mom makes daughter sound very sweet, but why was she yielding a knife and trying to stab the other woman? Police officer must take her out. You have to, right? Bumalik, it says, Robert, that's the new trend now. Don't comply to the police, then claim injustice, then sue the state, settle for millions. Wow, thank you, taxpayer money. Liberty or Death says, that is why I cannot stand Crump. He is as bad, if not worse, than Al Sharpton. Absolute race hustler. Crump is seeing more dollar signs. I made $8.91 million off of Floyd. I wonder what I can get off of this girl. Yeah, didn't he he's worked on a lot of these, right? So he just this is his business model. Just wait until somebody gets killed, then pontificate about it and go out there and try to sign them up. And he's got a pretty good track record. Okay, if your daughter's killed, you want the lawyer that got the Floyd family $27 million. Sharon Quidney says, polishing up my crystal ball here, my predictions, there will be riots until this officer is charged and convicted of murder. Next time a person of color, someone like George Floyd, is arrested, there will be riots until he's acquitted and released. Right? It's a playbook. It is one strategy, and we can see that you can kind of do it without any recourse. National Populist says, I believe we need to know who the man that kicked down the person is before we can understand what really happened here. Regardless, stopping a stabbing is the job of police. No? Yeah, I thought it was. I could be mistaken. I don't know what they're supposed to do, but I think that is one of the primary functions. Sharon Quidney says the cops should go on strike, quit, or just stand by and watch folks kill each other. See what happens. Of course, this is what the revolutionaries want. When there's total chaos, folks give up their rights to a totalitarian state just to have some kind of stability. Yeah, we saw, look what happened with COVID. Look what happened this last year. How much has everybody given up in exchange for not even anything, really, just a feeling? Like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm saving lives because my government told me to, because Dr. Fauci's out there saying, wrap your head around in cellophane like 45 times and you won't catch the coronavirus. You'll asphyxiate to death and be dead, but at least you'll be socially distanced from everybody else in your coffin. We have Avi Furliger says there is currently a sit-in at Ohio State demanding they cut ties with Columbus PD. Thankfully, the police chief is hinting they support the officer. They should, man. That was the only thing that officer could have done, in my from my perspective. Norovirus says, from a legal standpoint, if the officer waited for Bryant to actually stab the other person, then shoot Bryant, there would not be any question as to the legality of the shooting. Or just wait for 1 or 2 stabs just to make sure. Just 1 or 2. Yeah. Or like Joe Biden said, right? Just shoot him in the leg. Just shoot him in the leg. Well, why don't they shoot him in the leg? Because these people have no concept of real life physical interactions. That's why they have no idea. Just 1 or 2 stabs. Yeah, just let him stab. Can I shoot now? Maybe he should radio back in. Hey, we got a stabbing in progress here. Dispatch, just calling for advice. Okay, we're on stab 7 now. Need permission. Can I draw my gun and take out this suspect here? Stabbing 8. That's 10 times now. Wait till she gets 15 there, Charlie. Well, we've got 15 stabs now. All right, you're now clear to fire. Tremendous in the House says, what possible reform could they enact that would have prevented this? Nothing. There's a woman stabbing another woman in the middle of the daylight, broad daylight in the middle of Columbus, Ohio. Since none of these idiots care to be specific about that, maybe you could come up with some theories. I know I can't. Don't call the police, right? Don't call the police. Don't respond to these things, really. Or I don't know what the police could do. Just don't show up. I don't know what else they can do on these things. Justice First said, yesterday you seem somewhat clinical. So I think I got that one, Justice. I think I answered that one previously. Is this the one I was supposed to circle back on? Some tidbits of hope for our justice system. I don't have much for you. I'm sorry about that. It's part of what I'm trying to do with this show is help to educate other people about some of these concepts, like the presumption of innocence, like beyond a reasonable doubt. I think that as we start to see more of these things publicly sort of fleshed out, I am hopeful that more people will have conversations like this. We'll be a part of this show. We'll be a part of other conversations and start analyzing these issues with a critical hat on, because right now it feels to be very emotional. Now, I think the only offer of hope that I have at this moment is that we're in a pendulum, right now. I talk about pendulums a lot. They swing one direction and then the country sees where it's going. They don't like it. And then the pendulum swings back the other way. And I think we're sort of in one of these weird waves right now that I talk a lot about. We're going through this wave where we have a weird culture that is like woke, super woke culture. And we have a lot of people who have these really big ideas like defund the police and things that sound good. It sort of reminds me of, the 60s, like make love, not war, man. Like everything's peace and love and harmony. And that was just a phase that kind of came and went. And the reason why I think it went is because it doesn't work, right? That's not how real world is. That's not how reality functions. And so we're going to have a lot of people out there saying, well, defund the police and Chauvin this and Chauvin that, and the police shouldn't show up. And we're going to give the benefit of the doubt to every single person who is in a police interaction who is not a police officer, right? They all get the benefit of the doubt. There are going to be some very severe consequences to this. You're going to have less officers who become officers. You're going to have people bail out of cities. You're going to have, reorientations of different communities in this country, which is really what I think ultimately needs to happen. I've said this a long time here on the show. Local, I think, is better. And I like the idea of people being a little bit more mobile so that they can just kind of pick up and go to different areas where maybe they're better represented by their governments and their politicians. So if you're in a city that just wants to dump on the police at every turn, if you're in Minneapolis and they just convicted Chauvin, they're going to convict the 3 other officers who were there. They're probably going to convict Kim Potter, who's also, very close by to that. They've paid out $47 million by my count, $20 million to the Knorr case, another $27 million to the Floyd family. You've got now, calls for defunding the police sort of, bubbling up yet again. They tried that once already in Minneapolis. Didn't work out for them. They had to bring the money back and rehire some police. But, the people who are the engine of society, who actually make things work, they're going to get tired of being dumped on at some point in time. I have the same concept with taxes, right? And if you want to tax all of the rich, right, we're going to punish the rich by taxing the rich. They don't care. They just leave. They just go somewhere else because they have the wherewithal, the mechanism to do that. They just take their money, they go to a different state, they, form a new business entity, and they, move money around and they figure it out. Law enforcement agency is going to do the same thing, right? Cops are going to do the same thing. They're going to say, Minneapolis doesn't sound good. Where is a better law enforcement community? What is a better police agency to work for? What's a better environment? And, it's not going to happen overnight. It may take 10 years, but there will be a realignment. And then after that happens, we're going to see consequences. You're going to see an exodus. You're going to see a reorientation of our justice system from the people who sort of make it work, from the people who are the gears in the system. Right now, all of these criticisms are coming from people who are external to the system. You have people, like Nancy Pelosi and AOC talking about justice. To my knowledge, neither one of them are lawyers. They have no idea about any of this stuff. They sort of just use this as a political football. But that only goes so far. Eventually, the people who you rely on to actually run things, they're going to say enough of this already. And when that happens, the pendulum is going to swing the other way because there will be more crime. There's going to be a lot more social unrest that we'll probably see these little no-go zones in certain big cities that police just say, well, good luck, right? Every time we go there, we get arrested or indicted in the court of public opinion about what we do to serve our own community. So we're not going to serve you anymore. You don't want us. We don't want you. Bye. And, so we may have a period of darkness when we're all sort of wondering what our justice system looks like. And then what's going to happen? It's going to be even worse. Remember what happened in the 1990s? We had a big sort of, crime wave that our politicians were puffing up for everybody. And they passed a bunch of really draconian crime bills that we have to still live with. And so it's this cycle, right? Really increased hyper-partisan enforcement. We have a weaponizing of the justice system, but people are going to see that and they're going to start clamoring for a new system. So I don't know ultimately what that looks like, truly. I mean, if I can be candid about it, I've said this before previously. I like the idea of, this concept of a network state and sort of creating these little discontiguous zones where people sort of reorganize and pick up and move and say, we're not going to put up with that crap anymore. We're going to go negotiate our own little, nation states that are network states that we start from scratch, right? So rebuild up a system that actually functions, because I'm not so sure that this is going to be functional for much longer. If we see this trend continue moving forward, if cops just are automatically guilty in every interaction, that's not good, right? And that's going to cause some very serious ripple effects that we're all going to have to live with. And the people who are celebrating this right now, their communities are going to be the hardest hit, unfortunately. It's not going to be the politicians in DC or the CNN anchors wherever they're living, right? It's going to be the people in cities, in communities that have to deal with the absent police as a result of their own condemnation of them. It's going to be a problem. We have Norovira says special instructions for white people visiting. What is this? Welcome to George Floyd Square. This is where he took his last breath. Enter with reverence, care for each other. For white people in particular. Is this real? Nora? Decenter yourself. Come and listen. Be mindful of whether your volume, pace, and movement. Seek to contribute energy of the space. Consider if you want to need or take photos and post them. Do not take photos of other people without their consent. If you whiteness white folks doing problematic things, speak up with compassion, take the burden off the black folks. And so why would you even go, right? So let's say you want to go and pay homage to George Floyd. You have all these special rules. Pass on that. We have Ma Fox says, going to be a surprise coming from me most likely. Ma says, this is a quintessential use of deadly force for police. This is what the standard should be to utilize deadly force, a very real and active threat that you have no other option but to shoot to stop it. It's a tragedy she was 16, but I would never expect the potential victims to be forced to wait until officers attempted to exhaust other options while they're being actively stabbed to try something else. Robert, this was the correct call, and I hope the officer can deal with having to do this, with having had to do this in his line of work. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are considering the 16-year-old. You make a great point, Ma. A lot of people are really focused on Ma'Khia, right? She's dead. She's a 16-year-old girl. She got shot and killed. Terrible. I don't condone that at all. But what about the woman who was going to be stabbed? Should we have had more conversations about that? I'm going to guess she's pretty thrilled that this officer saved her life, right? And knife stabbings are not a joke. Okay, it's not like the movies. Knives are extremely, extremely lethal. They will kill you quickly. And that was a big one. It wasn't a Swiss Army knife or something like that, right? That was a big metal blade. Officer saved a woman's life, and he's going to be charged with a crime for that? He's got all these people screaming for his head. He's got LeBron James saying, "You're next, buddy." What? Yeah, you're right, Mom. This was the right call. You're right. Pat myself on the back right there. Thank you, Mom. All right. So our last segment of the day, we've got bad popo here in Arizona and around the world, but today we've got a good popo as well because we have this convergence of a bad popo and a good popo in this next story because one officer arrested another officer on suspicion of DUI. We're talking about Officer Julian Navarrete, who is actually here in Arizona. He's a Pinal County Sheriff's Officer. Pinal County is one county over from Maricopa County. And so he is now in some serious hot water, and we're going to pour some gas on that. So let's take a quick look at what's going on here. This is over from NBC News. Says a new video shows Arizona deputy use a racial slur and then beg for release after a DUI stop. Very bad popo. No racial slurs. That's bad. And you should not try to use your position as law enforcement to get out of custody. He says, this says, newly obtained body camera video captured an Arizona sheriff's deputy using a racial slur and pleading to be let off the hook after an officer pulled him out of a vehicle in December on suspicion of DUI. Pinal County Sheriff's Deputy Julian Navarrete was stopped after an Arizona State University police officer observed him speeding and swerving at about 2 a.m. on December 5th. All right, so some time ago. According to ASU police report, Navarrete was out with friends at the time of the arrest, the report said. When the ASU officer confronted the off deputy about driving under the influence, video obtained by NBC, which we're going to show you, he says he's admitting, saying, yeah, I was drinking, but I'm also a police officer, okay? This type of crap happens all the time. And I repeatedly say that this is a problem, that the police, they have that blue shield, that blue code of silence. You can look it up. I think there's a Wikipedia entry about this. But essentially, you know, cops, when they catch other cops doing bad things, they circle the wagons, they give everybody a pass, they flash their badge. Oh, you're a cop too. All right, listen, man, just, you know, don't do it again, go home, whatever. And that happens very regularly. And I have a huge, huge problem with that because it's one cop allowing another bad cop to get away with bad things. And the cops are supposed to be the enforcers of the law, the upholders of the law, not the people who bend the rules for their friends and colleagues. So that was starting to happen here. Okay, this deputy, Julian Navarrete, is like, hey, I'm a cop. I'm a police officer. Give me a break, my friend. Cop number 2 doesn't comply. He asks, how much have you had to drink tonight? Says the arresting officer, just a couple drinks. Navarrete flashed the officer his badge, according to footage. Officer then asked Navarrete to step out of his car after confirming he worked for the sheriff's office. Navarrete says, I've done this whole spiel, man. What are we going through? Navarrete said in response, can we let anybody else in the vehicle go through this? Can we let anybody else in the vehicle go through? So it's this guy right here. Very bad popo. Here he is from the body camera. He's in Arizona. He's around here. Navarrete. Now, I want to point this out, right? It says he whips out his badge. He flashes his badge, the officer, shows the other officer his badge. Now, 2 ways to interpret this, right? Of course, one way is to the benefit of the officer. Law enforcement, hey, we're both law enforcement. I'm supposed to show you that I'm law enforcement. Typically that's part of their policies and procedures. Hey, if you're stopped, if you're law enforcement, notify them that you're law enforcement. And they justify this for officer safety and communication, and right, just to communicate with each other. There's no other reason that that's required. Like, you're not going to give them a benefit of the doubt. You're not going to give them a warning if you find out that they're an officer instead of a ticket, are you? Of course not. Of course they would. They would never do that. But they do have to communicate it from one officer to another. So that's the benefit of the doubt reading, right? It's him saying, hey, FYI, I'm an officer. I actually have a firearm in here. I'm somebody who knows, how this procedure works. What do you need from me? I'm going to be totally compliant. You can let your guard down. I'm going to be working with you. What do you need from me? That's one way to do it. Or it's like this guy. Can we let anybody else in the vehicle go through this? I've done this whole spiel, man. So what does that look like under the law? Can you be charged with a crime for something like that? Let's take a quick gander. So we have impersonating a public servant, right? A person commits impersonating a public servant. Now you could say he's not impersonating a public servant, right? Because he is actually a public servant. Yeah, but not in this capacity, not on that particular day. So if he's throwing this out there, if he pretends to be a public service, if he says, hey, I'm an officer like right now, and I'm engaging in any conduct with the intent to induce another to submit to his pretended official authority or to rely on his pretended official acts. Well, maybe this could be a class 1 misdemeanor. right? Potentially, maybe. A person who knowingly attempts by means of bribery or misrepresentation, this is a different statute, obstruction of criminal investigations. Maybe misrepresentation, intimidation, or force or threats to delay, prevent the communication of information or testimony relating to a violation of a statute to a peace officer, magistrate, prosecutor, or grand jury. Oh, okay. Bribery, misrepresentation, intimidation. Maybe intimidation is a good one. Maybe you could say that this officer was saying, hey, I'm a deputy. Here's my badge. That type of stuff is a crime. Other people get charged with crimes for this stuff. Okay. If you get stopped and you say, listen, I'm on the board of something. We have a lot of power here. So why don't you let me go? Otherwise, maybe there'll be repercussions coming for you. Guess what? That's a crime, right? You're not allowed to make those types of implied threats. Now, not saying this guy did that, but if you start flashing your badge around, it's kind of that little bro code that's going on. All right. So we have some more from the article. Then we're going to take a quick look at the video. ASU officer said it didn't matter if he's a deputy. He said, then that puts my job at risk, right? Navarrete said. Officer responded, you don't think it's going to put mine at risk if I don't do this? Navarrete responds, dude, I understand, but can I maybe someone else put like behind the wheel, Navarrete said. Don't put my effing career at risk. He pleaded for his release again. ASU officer said, this isn't New York, man. He said, New York? He says the N-word. N-word, probably an N, and probably ending with an A, if you want to guesstimate what that word is. From Navarrete. He says, I'm from Arizona, dude. I'm not from New York. After the ASU officer conducted a field sobriety test, Navarrete took a breathalyzer test, blew a .121, which is over the legal limit of .08 in Arizona, but it's under the it's under the extreme DUI, which is at a .15. Navarrete was arrested on DUI charge, taken into custody at the ASU police station. Then Navarrete asked the officer why he didn't give him a pass, according to the footage. He said, you couldn't effing give me the opportunity to park the car. He said, no one reported it. Very bad popo. Now we have a good popo who responds and says, listen, the fact that you're telling me that tells me you shouldn't be an officer. Bravo, ASU officer. Well done. Spokesman for the Pinal County Sheriff's Office told KPNX that Navarrete was initially placed on modified duty. During that time, he was prohibited from driving a patrol car. Well, probably because his license was suspended at that time. So the way that it works is if you get charged with a DUI, your license is suspended for 90 days in Arizona. 30 days total suspension. The next 60, you can get a restricted license. So if he got stopped on December 5th, then right about now is when he would be getting his license back. So of course he was on modified duty. His license was suspended. So he can't drive a patrol car. So you have a law enforcement officer who can't even drive a car because he's facing criminal charges, who's on modified duty. He rode with another deputy while taking regular calls for service. All right, here's a video.
Drinking, dude, and you were driving. Yeah, but I'm also a police officer.
ASU cops pulling over Pinal County Sheriff's Deputy Julian Navarrete after a night out in Tempe back in December.
Hey, how much you had to drink tonight, man? It's a couple drinks.
Around 2 in the morning, an ASU police officer pulling Navarrete over near McClintock and University, saying he saw the then 26-year-old speeding and swerving. Navarrete quickly showing the officer his badge.
Who do you work for, Pinal? Pinal.
The officer says he smelled of alcohol, asking Navarrete to step out of the car.
Can we let anybody else in the vehicle go through this?
Navarrete asking the officer to consider the fact that he's in law enforcement too.
It doesn't matter if you're an officer or not. Then that puts me my job at risk, right? You don't think it's going to put mine at risk if I don't do this? Dude, I understand. But can I maybe someone else put behind the wheel? Don't put my career at risk.
The Pinal County Sheriff's deputy then using a racial slur.
This isn't New York, man. Okay? New York, I'm from Arizona, dude. Watch your mouth.
Navarrete blew a .121. The officers arrest him for driving under the influence. Back at the police station, Navarrete continuing to ask the ASU officer why he couldn't let him off the hook.
You could have Gave me opportunities to park the car. No one reported. The fact that you're telling me that tells me you shouldn't be an officer.
A spokesperson for the Pinal County Sheriff's Office says the department initially put Navarrete on modified duty, but now PCSO confirms he's back to regular duty, declining to comment further, saying he's currently the subject of an internal investigation related to this incident. 12 News briefly spoke with him on the phone.
No, thank you. I'm not like to make statements this time.
Bianca Bono, 12 News.
All right, so yeah, sounded like he was trying to talk his way out of that, and that other officer, to his credit, very, very good popo. Want to make sure that we acknowledge that. Don't know that officer's name, but he says you should not be an officer if you are trying to get out of this citation. Bad officer, good officer, both there together. Let's wrap up this story. Spokesman from Pinal County said that he was initially placed on modified duty during that time, like as I said, prohibited from driving a car, rode with another deputy. However, on Monday, he returned to regular duty. So this officer is back on duty as of yesterday. Spokesman declined to comment further, but said that Deputy Navarrete is currently the subject of an internal investigation related to this incident. As such, we cannot discuss the case. ASU Police Department said our officers handled themselves in a professional manner, as they would with any subject they encounter. Outstanding work, gentlemen. Navarrete told the news station he did not want to make a comment, and they tried to catch him today. They were not able to catch him either. So, very bad popo. Now, of course, the police department, they just, whatever. You're back on regular duty. You figure it out. You think you're innocent? Yeah, you're going to contest it in court? All right, great. So, not good. Not good. Bad popo there. Let's take some questions over from locals.com. We want to say hey to Hack Consulting. Says, people keep forgetting that while cops are humans, cops are still a job. Reforms are done with police are bad, and also when police are not shining everyone's shoes. Haven't gotten shot yet, but I do my best to make sure that I lessen my chances of being shot. It's a good strategy. Something that everybody should try to do. Lessen your chances of being shot. I only talk nicely with cops when talking about things unrelated to whatever is going on. They are off duty, and when the hardest part of the stop is over and rapport is capable. Yeah, that's a good comment there, Hack Consulting, and I think that's relevant, right? Cops are just people. So they're not 100% heroes. They're also not 100% monsters. They're not 100% racists or 100% anti-racist, right? They are people. There are good cops, amazing cops, incredible, outstanding cops. We wish we had millions of them. And there are some pretty bad ones. And there are some in between. And I think the only way that we can really see some meaningful reform in our system is with accountability and transparency. We have to open up that box and see what's inside before we can start really working on any meaningful solutions. And so those are great questions. I want to thank you for sending all of those over. And so we're going to wrap up for the day. We got some things we got to get to before we close out the show. Before we do, I want to tell you where I'm going after this. I'm going to have dinner. I have some very special people in town, my aunt and uncle, and I want to say hello to them. I think they're watching the show right now. In fact, let's give them a shout out. Hello, Uncle Joe and Aunt Bev. Welcome to Arizona. These are two very important people in my life, and I wanted to tell you a quick story about them, actually. So they're in town. They come in town every now and then. And Uncle Joe has been somebody who's been in my life for a long period of my whole life, right? He's my oldest uncle. So my mom is one of 7 people. Uncle Joe is the oldest. He's sort of the patriarch of the family, the eldest that everybody kind of looks up to, gives us some guidance. And in my life, he's always been somebody who has been the person with answers. And it'd be fun, growing up, I would come to him with questions and I would ask his opinion on certain things. He's extremely, highly educated. He's somebody who is, had a very, very impressive career in medicine, very intellectual, extremely intelligent. And so in my life, he's been somebody that I've always kind of looked up to. And he's actually been relatively instrumental in my political disposition and sort of some of the things that I think about, that I talk about on this show. I've had Uncle Joe in my life, my whole life growing up. And so there have been some things that have stuck with me as I have matured. And so one of the things I was thinking about as I wanted to give him a shout out today, when I was young, remember, we've gone through so many different sort of health phases in my life, and they changed dramatically. I don't even know which one we're on now. Are we on vegan still? Is it gluten-free still? I don't know if it's paleo or keto. I can't keep track anymore. Is it the 1 meal a day? Is it the carnivore diet? The plant-based, whatever. I can't tell, right? It's very complicated. And so when I was growing up, we were in one of those cycles, and I forget what the heck, whatever it was. But we were having a conversation about this, and my Uncle Joe lives up in Seattle, Oregon, up in that area. He's got properties up there. And so we were having a conversation about it, and we were asking about how it was living in that part of the country. We all know that there are special people in that country, especially politically. And one of the first things, I was a teenager, he called them something that stuck with me. I think I was 12, 13, 14, whatever. He called them granola crunchers. He said, all of these granola crunchers up there in Yakima, Washington, or whatever, they're making life difficult. And so that just sort of stuck with me, right? These granola crunchers. And I thought it was hilarious. One of the funniest sort of labels for people, because I knew exactly what they're talking about. Now I sort of call them, the Starbucks screenplay people, the people who go over there and, sort of fake like they're doing something meaningful in the world. It's the people who eat granola. How do you know they eat granola? Well, they tell you about it. How do you know somebody does CrossFit? They tell you about it. How do you know somebody's a vegan? They tell you about it. They make sure that you know about it. Back then, 20 years ago, it was granola and whatever was going on back then. But the granola crunchers today have been modified into whatever we're dealing with, the whatever people, we have them. And so, the point is, Uncle Joe, thank you for that, right? You've been somebody who's been very, very important in my life. And a lot of those little lessons that we had conversations about as I was growing up have stuck with me into our today. They helped me become the guy that I am today. And I want to say shout out to Aunt Bev as well. My Aunt Bev and Uncle Joe, they are high school sweethearts. They have been married longer than I've been alive. And it is such a cool thing. It's such an amazing couple. And I'm so grateful that you both are in town. I cannot wait to see you. I'm heading right over there as soon as the show is over. And so big shout out to you both. Thanks for taking the time to watch the show. And so that's Uncle Joe and Aunt Bev. Big shout out to you. Thank you both. And I'm sure that the people in the chat are also welcoming you. Appreciate all that you've done for me and for the world. So thank you to you both. Also want to thank everybody over on Locals. We have some new people who signed up. I want to welcome Davis Parks. Welcome to the community. If you want to sign up, by the way, you can check that out over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. So go check that out. Davis Parks is in the house. We have Annie got her gun. Ooh, Annie got her gun is in the house. We have Rust US or Rust Us. We have Lil TLC in the house. We have AB Taylor 658. Welcome. Catherine Lee in the house. We have Girly099. Welcome to our community. J_Naughty K is in the house. Black Dog 542. Welcome to you. R Holiday. We have L Crew S. We have Huggin Munnin in the house. We got a lot of people who signed up, and the list keeps going. Welcome to Daniel Barbosa. Welcome. We have Blazing Guns in the house. Saw you today. Napalm Grenade is also in the house. Texas Island Girl is in the house. Chris001, welcome. Taryn M, good to see you. Zach B is in the house. Patrick Carey 82 signed up. XXYOROY XX is in the house. And Big Truck Becca, welcome to the community. And you can sign up if you want to join in on that fun and ask questions and be a part of the show and support us and download a bunch of free great stuff and get promo codes to all sorts of stuff. Do that at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I want to thank all of the people, of course, who asked some questions today. You know who you are. You're on that list. Thank you for the great feedback, the great questions. And then let's give some shout outs to other people who are part of the Locals community. So we'll give some shout outs. We've got Senevis 91. We have Rags in the house. Hello to David Muir. We have Tweak. We got Whipple number 1, Dutch Girl 956. We got Sandy Paws in the house. Welcome to you. All of these people are over at locals.com. And what's so important about Locals is it's a separate platform. On some of these other areas, some of these YouTube and Facebook and some of these other platforms, you're kind of beholden to the big tech platform. And Locals, it's a lot of independent creators talking about independent things, and all of these people make that possible. We talk about this concept of the network effect, and people want to go where other people are. And so when we first started this community, it was a little bit of it was empty. Not many people were there, and that's not as fun. But when you join us over there, you help it become more fun, and you help make it so other people want to be there also. And so you're like literally helping to build a separate independent platform, brick by brick. And I just really appreciate that. That gives us a little bit more autonomy, gives me a little bit more security, makes me feel like, okay, you know, if YouTube decides to pull the plug on us, we've got a little bit of a backup platform. And so thank you for signing up and for helping us build and fortify the show. I also want to tell you can download a bunch of great stuff over there. Get a copy of my Existence Systems Beginning to Winning. Beginning to Winning is available here. Existence Systems is now an online course. So on Locals, you can download the book. There's a free book, free PDF. Grab that, of course. Can also grab the slides that we went through today. Those are available for your download. You can get a copy of my impeachment party template is available there. The Existence System template is also available if you're a local subscriber. And there is also a promo code for the new online course. And it's available. It's up. It's right now. If you want to go and check it out, you can go over to existencesystems.com and it's going to walk you through how to build this. This is my Existence System. When you open it up, you're going to see this is my little personal productivity tool that I use every day. And so the program is about creating a version of this for yourself. It's about going through and modifying each one of these different modules. I have 32 videos, about 2 hours and 19 minutes of content in there. And it guides you through bit by bit on how to fill out each one of these blocks, how to put your affirmations in, define your energy blocks, figure out what your life pillars are, what your mission is, what your purpose is. And so it's available now. You can go buy it if you want to join in on it. It's very inexpensive. The website is existencesystems.com. There's a promo code if you're a Locals subscriber. So go on over to Locals. You get a pretty significant little discount there. And this is what the template looks like. If you want to really take a quicker, good look at it, it's available now. And I'm super excited about it. Now it's my first kind of attempt at a public offering like this, so there are probably some kinks that I got to work out at some point, but it's functional. I've tested it. It's there. It's ready. And so I would appreciate any feedback, any thoughts, any likes or dislikes, any constructive criticism, feedback, whatever. If you want to send that our way, I would be very, very appreciative of it, because this is something that I think I may want to sink a little bit more time into, about communicating some of these ideas in a structured way that is useful for people. And so this is my first attempt at it. And so I'd be humbled if you gave it a look. Existencesystems.com is the address. And then my friends, that is it for me. We've got nothing left. We've gone 2 hours, big, lot of great show, a lot of content, a lot of outstanding questions. And I'm very appreciative that you are a part of the show. So I want to leave you with that final thank you. We're going to be back here tomorrow, same place, same time. It's at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody have a very lovely evening. Hopefully you had a nice dinner. If not, get some food in that belly. Rest well. I will see you back here tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye-bye.